Hello and welcome back. This week's movie that I'm going to talk about was a movie that was actually picked by my sister. She asked me to do a video on a movie that we watched all the time when we were kids, and this movie is Waxwork. So, Waxwork was filmed in 1988 and is a fantastic movie, which is why I was very surprised it was not on my shower curtain. She was super sweet and she was willing to pick a movie that was on my shower curtain, but she's not a really big horror fan. She was more into it when we were younger. So I wanted her to be able to pick a movie that she actually loves, whether or not it's on my curtain. Also, when this video posts, it's going to be her birthday. So happy birthday. I love you. And here you go. Waxwork is a movie that follows six friends as they are invited to a private showing at a new wax museum that just popped up in their town. As they're there, we find out that this museum is more than they expected. We open with a scene that's playing very jazzy, upbeat music as a man is being murdered. We then meet our hero, Mark. He's sitting in the dining room in the house where the man in the previous scene had been murdered. As Mark leaves the house, we now meet his butler by the name of Jenkins. The next scene, we see two of Mark's friends by the name of Sarah and China. They're both walking down the sidewalk and they happen to notice this new waxwork that has appeared in their town seemingly overnight. As they're looking at this house, the owner of the waxwork appears and invites them to a private showing at midnight that night. He says that they can go ahead and invite a few of their friends, but there's to be no more than 6 attendees. We now meet the rest of the group. We have Tony, Gemma, and Gemma's boyfriend, James. So Sarah and China tell the others about the invite for the wax museum, and all of them agree to go that night. We also find out in this scene that China has just recently had a date with the football star Jonathan. This makes Mark very unhappy. The friends have now arrived at the waxwork. Gemma and James, not feeling very comfortable with the whole situation, take off and leave the other 4 to go in on their own.
James, I want to go home.
What? It was your idea to come in the first place.
Yeah, but this is not my idea of fun.
Come on, James, let's just take a look.
No. It just doesn't feel right, guys.
Hey, honey, wait up!
We meet 2 rather odd employees.
You're supposed to wait until I ring the bell. Get out! Get out!
And the group enters the museum. The friends are walking around the waxwork looking at the various displays, and you notice that several of them actually depict a victim. So now we see Tony standing in front of an exhibit. He goes to use his lighter and it flies out of his hand into this exhibit. Stepping in to retrieve the lighter, he steps into another place and time.
My lighter.
Now, this is a scene that I'm showing you just because for some reason when we were kids, my sister and I would rewind this part over and over and over and just laugh hysterically. We thought it was hilarious.
And we got house. Just go to the house.
So Tony has walked into the life of a werewolf. At first, he thinks that this is just an elaborate prank that his friends put on using hypnotism, and he soon finds out how wrong he is. We now see that Tony has become a part of the exhibit. So now we know that the other exhibits that show victims have had people die in them. And now China enters an exhibit. Unknown to her, she's just walked in on a dinner party with several vampires, including Dracula, at the head of the table. Once she finds out, she actually holds her own for a while. She does pretty damn good. And then she succumbs to the allure of Dracula. Mark starts to get kind of a strange feeling while in the waxwork. He's not able to find two of their friends, and so he goes, gets Sarah, and they leave. Afterward, he calls around to his friend's parents' house and find out they never made it home the night before. Jonathan, the football player that China had been dating, also found out that she had never made it home the night before, and out of jealousy, he goes to look for her in the wax museum. He then gets pushed into the exhibit of the Phantom of the Opera.
Would you like a closer look?
Really?
Step in, please.
Mark now goes to the police station to report that his friends have gone missing after visiting the waxwork. So Inspector Roberts accompanies Mark back to the waxwork and talks to the owner. Now, the owner says that the waxwork has not opened yet, so the only way that these kids could have been in that night were if they broke in. So now Roberts, looking around the wax museum and finding nothing, decides to leave. Later on, we see him in his office and he looks troubled. He's looking through missing persons flyers and he's starting to have flashbacks of the wax museum figures, and he realizes that their likenesses match. So he then decides that he's going to go back to the waxwork and have another look around, this time on his own. He walks into the exhibit that China fell victim to and nothing happens. So apparently if you walk into an exhibit that already has killed somebody, nothing will happen to you. It'll be just like a regular exhibit. He then walks into an Egyptian exhibit and is killed by a mummy. Mark and Sarah are now in the attic at Mark's house, where he explains that his grandfather, 40 years previously, had been murdered in that house. His name was Michael Loftmore. This paper also mentions the disappearance of a man by the name of David Lincoln, who was Michael's chief helper of the house. The picture in the paper shows David as being the owner of the waxwork. Mark and Sarah now go to the home of a man named Sir Wilfrid. Wilfrid was a friend of Mark's grandfather Michael back when he was alive. Wilfrid explains that Michael had taken trinkets from 18 evil men, and he had also taken artifacts from these 18 men's homes. These are actually the 36 items that were stolen from Michael after David had killed him. David took these items, 2 from each of the 18 men, and he recreated the men's dwellings, creating a sort of time capsule. He then created the wax effigies using an item that had belonged to these men. So now all 18 of these exhibits need a victim. Once they have all of these victims, evil will rise and destroy everything. Wilfrid tells Mark and Sarah that they must burn down this wax museum before all 18 victims can be claimed. After Mark and Sarah leave, Wilfrid gets on the phone and tells somebody on the other line it has begun. Mark and Sarah have now broken into the waxwork to burn it from the inside out. Sarah now enters the exhibit of the Marquis de Sade, and Mark is pushed into a zombie exhibit.
Bravo!
After severing a zombie hand, Mark is able to escape his exhibit. Now, because Sarah has not been killed in hers yet, Mark is able to then enter the exhibit of the Marquis de Sade as well. He proves to Sarah that if she doesn't believe, she can get out. He and Sarah now leave the exhibit. We now see that Gemma and James have arrived at the waxwork because they had gotten a call stating that their friends were there. While they went there to look for them, they unwittingly became the 17th and 18th victims. Wilfrid now arrives with an army that includes Mark's butler Jenkins, and a battle ensues. The waxwork is finally set on fire.
Would you like a closer look?
And Mark and Sarah are the only survivors. Zach Galligan is the man who played Mark. He can be seen in movies like Gremlins, Sacred Grounds, and Waxwork 2. Deborah Foreman is the woman who plays Sarah, and she can be found in movies such as April Fool's Day, which I absolutely love, and another great movie, Real Genius. Michelle Johnson is the woman who played China, and she can be found in movies such as Dr. Giggles and Blood Ties. Eric Brown played James, and he's been in movies such as Stepfather 2 and Rockabye Baby. Claire Carey played Gemma, and she was in You Lie, You Die and Point Pleasance. The director was Anthony Hickox. He also directed Warlock, Hellraiser 3, and Full Eclipse. Now for the fun facts. Now, apparently, Jason Voorhees, The Thing, and 5 children from Village of the Damned were also going to be in these displays. As a matter of fact, Jonathan, the man who was killed by the Phantom of the Opera, originally it was scripted that he was going to be killed by Jason Voorhees. Due to legal reasons, they were not able to use these characters. Now, for me personally, I'm happy about that because you have the Marquis de Sade, who was big. I believe it was in the mid 1700s. You have Dracula, you have zombies. Both of those were created in the 1800s. And this is a museum. It would have felt off using more recent villains for these exhibits. Kane Hodder, who has played Jason Voorhees in several of the Friday the 13th movies, did special effects for this movie. He did stunts, and apparently he played Frankenstein's monster in this movie. The house that was used as the exterior for the waxwork still stands today. It's a residential home, and apparently the owners have built a large shrub around the whole house for privacy reasons. Deborah Foreman, the woman who played Sarah, was actually dating the director at the time of this movie. Apparently it ended very badly, so when it came time to make the second movie, she opted out of playing Sarah. While in Los Angeles, director Hickox crashed into a car, and the driver of that car was a man by the name of Stefan Ehrenberg. So Ehrenberg apparently was looking for a script to produce. Hearing this, Hickox created this script within 3 days, and the rest is history. This movie took some of its inspiration by a 1924 silent German film. So there you have it. I absolutely love this movie, have ever since I was a child, so I very obviously am giving this 5 coffins. If you have not seen it, you should correct this oversight and watch it immediately. One more huge happy birthday to my most amazing sister. I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope you have a great day. I love you, and let's watch this movie together soon.